Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool. When I've done videos in the past about screw extraction pliers, one of the questions that often comes up is people ask, first of all, what are they for? And second, which one should I get if I was going to get one? And I'm going to address those in just a sec, but I thought I'd do a quick follow-up. I had some good questions, two in particular, about this Snap-on cordless circuit tester. The first one is, can you use it with gloves? And the second is, what about that battery? So the first question with gloves, here's a couple of options. Here is a traditional nitrile glove, and if I go up to this battery and try to get it to work, nothing happens. And I'll pull my thumb out just to show you here. So if I hold it this way, get that cord out of the way, it works there, but if I use a finger, it does not, whoops, get back in the frame, does not work. Touching to skin, does work. So these are out. What about if you've got a glove with some kind of a, like, here's a smart swipe. This thing allows you to operate your phone with your knuckle. Does that work? Well, let's do this. I'm going to flip this around, hold it like this, up against that part, and now we'll try it. And I'm touching, of course, this carbonized area. Whoops, flipped out when I hit it. Try that again. Kind of a crazy position. There we go. So here we go. So it is making contact with that touch area here. So there is potential for a glove that you could use. However, I tried it with another one of the older style Milwaukee's, with that little touch area there. So if I flip this over and hold it the same way, whoops, same way up against that and try it, I'm not getting it there. What I'm going to do is pop my thumb free from this glove and see if I can get that to activate. Maybe it's not going to work with that glove. Yeah, I can't get my thumb out and these all the way in, I don't believe. Close enough. So I'm getting a little bit there. So if I'm touching it with my thumb, certainly works. If I go to holding it onto that spot, I'm not getting it, even though I'm pushing hard right there with my finger. And you can operate your thumb or your phone with that. So that's question number one. Number two is the battery. Here's the instructions that came with it. If you zero in, right down here it says field replaceable parts circuit module with battery. There is a part number for that. And when I look close at this, I thought, what kind of a battery is it? So I went to some of my oddball batteries that I've got. So here's a, you look at that right there, A23, too narrow. Here's an E90, too narrow. Here is a CR123 and a CR2. So this is the closest, but if you look really close, it looks too long, like it wouldn't fit within that circuit board. I don't know what that is, but my guess is proprietary, which is why you have to replace the whole circuit board. You can, of course, take it apart and do that. This module here appears to be like the single light I had in my old school one, except it's this entire module. No AC, as people pointed out. Lots of opinions on this. It was interesting to learn a lot about it. But gloves, no, in general. Possible, yes, but I don't know what exists that would work. And as far as the battery, no, doesn't look like you can replace just that. You've got to replace the entire circuit board. So enough of that thing. Let's get on with the screw extraction pliers. So these are actually a really good, I did the video on these, all-around one. Now the screw extraction pliers, when people ask me which should I get, it's like, what kind of screws do you think you might extract? They're little teeny weeny ones like that. You can look at these. You can see that's also a step down, or much larger there. There are other entries. These are engineers here. These are engineers I'll go over because this is one of my new favorites. Knipex, that's their entry. It's actually a nice size. Compare that to the inability to grab anything like a screw extraction plier. These are some Snap-on linemans. So you can see the difference. That one does have it in this VAM plier. Here is a traditional Snap-on plier, needle nose. This guy here, the 196 ANCF, it doesn't really have any kind of extraction capabilities. However, this 612 AEP pistol grip Snap-on does have some extraction, and again, that is very good. It's very similar to the Knipex, maybe a little smaller. Now there are some others. Obviously, this little teeny weeny one on this pair of VAM pliers. This is for little teeny weeny screws. And then this, as I mentioned, was a nice balance. But there's a new entry I want to show you. This is the Ninjasaurus. It's an Engineer plier. Engineer is known for making VAM pliers. It seems whether you've got the full Japanese Market 1 or the VAM plier USA Market 1, that they all have a sense of humor. In fact, on this one, this plier here is like, well, I don't know why I even bother telling you prices. About $22, $23, something like that, as of right now. It is spring-loaded. It is an excellent manufacture. I mean, it's just beautiful. I don't see any issues with the fit and finish. Here's the issue, is if you want this cover, it's like another $6. So you're telling me that basically this thing costs 1/4 of these entire pliers? Well, maybe it should, because if you look close, it's got a face. In fact, I drew the face out on this so you could see it. I even gave it some nostrils. I think Engineer really should have molded some nostrils into it. There's a face, tooth, eye. I might draw a little white dot on that just to give it some fun. But anyway, how does this work? Works very well. Here's some issues, or not issues really, but differences. VAM plier, one of their marketing strategies has to do with how well those teeth come together. They are perfectly machined to match. Whereas this one, this doesn't even close. In fact, I'll grab my light here and compare a few of these. It's kind of interesting. So here is, got to rotate it. Look at that, is fully closed. You can see the cutting jaws, which are the smallest I think I've ever seen on a pair of multi-pliers like this. But otherwise, that's as close as they get. That is a completely different philosophy than the VAM plier. I can even go up to this big VAM plier here and watch those teeth close. Right there. They just mesh. This one's the most obvious. Try to line those up, get the camera to focus. See how they just fit together? So one of VAM pliers' selling points is that they actually have teeth that match, so you could grab like a sheet of paper. You know, here, not even close. I mean, you don't need a light to see that. These close quite fine, but lots of pliers have both cutting teeth and a closing top. But it also has a few other tricks up its sleeve. The depth of the screw grabbing is pretty big. Cut my fingernail off with these guys here. Hang on just a sec. That's how I usually cut them. Good, nice. All right. Oh, missed a spot. There we go. Close enough. I don't spend much on my fingernail trimming. Anyway, there we go. So nice little cutters there. Bolt grabbing right there. And then it switches entirely, this entire front end, for the concept of grabbing screws, which I was going to answer the question, why? Why don't you just use a screwdriver, is what people say. And that's probably a mistake that I made, because I didn't grind out the tips, or the crosses in the screw. I could have just drilled those out, so there's no way you can get a screwdriver in it. That's why you use these. Otherwise, screwdrivers work great. But these aren't just screw extraction, they can be screw insertion as well. So if you can grab the screw well enough, tight enough, and straight enough so it doesn't wiggle, then you can start them as well. And that's critical, I think, in a lot of applications, especially really small screws in really tight locations. Right there, look at that. I mean, it's in there. I'm pushing on it pretty hard to get it to bend. And if I squeeze tight, I can't get it to bend. I could drive that in, line it up straight, drive it in without any trouble. You can't do that with a regular pair of pliers because the way that they hold, especially like if you've got a crosshatch or a smooth jaw, it immediately starts to bend. There's really no way you can hold it straight. It pops to the side. So it comes down to how big a jaw do you need. And the jaw is in two different directions. First of all, it's in, if you want to think of it as like the jaw diameter right off the bat, and also the curvature. So there is a big difference. Here's the Knipex. Some people absolutely love these as screw extraction. Plus, they're a great, slip joint. Some people hate slip joints, or at least they weren't as thrilled with these. This is just a great entry level with a nice, solid, design for certain size screws, which I'll get to in a sec. This obviously is for larger screws. It's going to have a little bit of trouble with teeny weeny ones. So I've got a handful of screws here, so let's take a look. If your screw extraction needs might be something like this, and people always ask, why is that even still a thing? I work on vintage furniture quite often, antiques, and this is a classic. It's a slotted screwdriver, or a slotted fastener, for wood. That's what they use. If you want to keep it mostly period, then that's what you got to do. If I see any kind of a Phillips, especially a deck screw, I know I've got a little bit more work ahead of me as far as refinishing and working on that furniture. But anyway, so larger ones require a larger diameter, so you can see how that fits in there. Nice. If you try to do it on something small, this doesn't work at all. I mean, it's not non-zero, but this is just about as useful as a non-screw extraction plier. This is for very tiny stuff. It works great on little itty-bitty screws like that, whereas larger ones don't work very well. Hard to grab. They tend to, whoops, fell down through it. This one, however, it does grab this, barely. Because you can't seat it, but that's definitely strong enough. And if I go up to something larger like this, if I can get a hold of those edges, it's not the best, but I am working on the high end of this. And if I squeeze hard, I can get a pretty good grip. This is probably too big. This might be closer to the actual limit. That's in there pretty solid. However, this here really doesn't have the ability to grab that tight. So this is too big for the needle nose ones, and this is probably too big for these multi-component ones, but not these bigger Van pliers. If we go to something like this, that's actually in there really solid. And if I go down to something smaller, really solid. This is why I like this one, but it is limited in what its feature set, which is why I'm highlighting this particular one. This is the PZ-58 Engineer, spring-loaded, which is why you may want the cap so it's not sprung in your toolbox. But otherwise, last entry of the larger ones. This is kind of interesting if I compare that to the Knipex. A little bit different, but fairly similar in size, which means its screw range is right in the middle. And these actually work really well. They're just by far the most expensive screw extraction pliers I have. I think these are like pushing $80. These I got under $20. These were about $22. Van plier seems to be between $7 and $10 more than in the Engineers. And then these Knipex, whole different world. But these 30, 35, somewhere in there, maybe 40 if they're in short supply. So what size do you need? Well, if you're going after these teeny weeny itty bitty screws, probably so small I lost it, there it is. Get some teeny weeny itty bitty screw extraction pliers. You know, if you're working on electronics, that's probably a good one. If it's around the house, this one, this one, this one. If it's something larger, you know, if you might be going after bigger screws, machine screws, screws in metal, something like that is great. These are for little tiny ones. If you want also needle nose versus just a dedicated essentially a screw extraction plier with a little bit of bolt grabbing. But otherwise, if you want slip joints, I still recommend these for screw extraction. And then these are becoming my new favorite all-around screw extraction pliers with kind of that multi-plier head or jaw. The problem, of course, they've got tiny cutters down here, which is usually okay, but they don't meet up at the top. So if you want to grab anything else, you're somewhat limited. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's the difference that I notice between all of these. And with that, Doc out.